whatever you do is impacting somebody upriver or downriver. So everybody has to work together. This has to be a collaborative effort. It has to be a regional effort.
We look at it as a system, and a system such as this does not know geopolitical boundaries.
With the completion of the partnership between the Little Calumet River Basin Development Commission and the Army Corps of Engineers, we are looking back on the story of the organization and its dedication to protecting and enhancing the lives of communities in northern Indiana. This is a tale of resilience, collaboration, and innovation in the face of challenges from nature. For decades, the Little Calumet River was notorious for its frequent and devastating floods. Homes, businesses, and infrastructure suffered repeated damage. A major flood halfway through the 20th century prompted a call to action from the affected communities.
In the early 50s, we had some pretty significant floods in this area, especially North Lake County by the Little Calumet River, and 1954 was pretty catastrophic, and at that point it sort of woke the area up as to the potential issues with future development and the problems with water and trying to corral it.
Over the next 2 decades, public officials worked to assess the scope of a flood protection project and charted the path to move forward, including the creation of the Little Calumet River Basin Commission in 1971. Major progress occurred when Indiana lawmaker Adam Benjamin embarked on a concerted effort to address the issue.
Adam Benjamin, in the 70s, got the feasibility study going, and that's the first step that you need. In 1980, the state created the Little Calumet River Basin Development Commission, signed into law under Otis Bowen, and at that point they just began to get everything in order, try to get the spine of the organization in place.
The mission of the organization was clear: oversee flood control projects, manage water resources, and improve the quality of life for the basin's residents. In 1986, President Reagan signed the Water Resources Development Act. Northwest Indiana was the recipient of a federal project designed to provide flood protection up to the 200-year level.
In the 80s, it was all about planning. When you're talking about a $260 million project, a lot of design, a lot of engineering needed to take place. At the same time, you needed to acquire the properties that they needed to necessitate and facilitate the design that they put together. It was in 1990 that was our formal relationship with the Army Corps, where it was agreed that the Little Cal Commission would be the local sponsor. Federal government would be the 75% or 80% of the cost, and we would be partners to fix the flooding issues that plague Northwest Indiana.
The next 20 years would see large-scale projects enacted to protect the homes, businesses, and industries along the river. And as every phase was completed, there would come new insights and incentive to collaborate further with local entities and the public at large.
In the beginning, they were quite determined to have only non-structural protection in certain areas. As time passed, it seems to me that the Army Corps became a little more amenable to making adjustments. So over this 20-year period that we were actually constructing the flood project itself, there were a lot of adjustments in attitudes, a lot of adjustments in just how people saw the project.
The partners never lost sight of the importance of the project to prevent a catastrophe on the banks of the Little Cal. Unfortunately, Mother Nature's timetable was not in line with the pace of planning and construction that was set forth by the team, and the region would be forced to deal with the worst flooding event in its history.
From the standpoint of how I got involved in this, it was 100% having to do with the September 2008 flood here in Northwest Indiana, to the point where personally I just couldn't. I stood in my driveway, which is in the northeast part of Munster, and watched 8 feet of water just basically blanket my entire neighborhood. To this day, that has an impact.
It was so devastating and hit so many areas. It was like now everybody can see what we've been talking about. When it flooded, it wasn't a 200-year flood event, but one much higher. The point is that the actual flooding was so devastating that anything that we had imagined might happen did, and even more. I don't think anybody really thought too much about the highway flooding. Nobody thought about IUN flooding, but all of those things flooded. It was a devastating event.
It did show that the community can come together. You know, and it's unfortunate that it took something where it was $1 billion of damage, and 4 days the Borman Expressway was closed down. It's unfortunate that that kind of trauma had to reset the bar for us to be able to move forward to getting to where we are today.
The flood of 2008 showed people from Whiting to Crown Point to Valparaiso and everywhere in between how important the flood project was. The water eventually receded, leaving scars upon the region, and as disaster cleanup began, so did the push to move flood protection forward more quickly. The stakeholders responsible for protecting the residents of the Calumet Basin from disaster always knew the goal was important, but the flood of 2008 added an incredible sense of urgency and responsibility. For the next 16 years, protection projects moved their way west, and previous installations were continually assessed with a focus on maintenance. By 2024, the plan set forth by the Army Corps of Engineers, the Little Calumet River Basin Development Commission, and collaborating agencies is complete, and the next phase of flood protection can be enacted.
We're definitely celebrating the end of our relationship with the Army Corps because part of the story is complete. It's like you finished the first chapter or the fifth chapter, but the project will go on. It needs to go on forever. We're celebrating, but cautiously optimistic that we need to keep going forward because otherwise we're going to repeat what has happened.
In my opinion, this is a perpetual project because I think we've seen issues of if you don't maintain a man-made project or a man-made entity, it's going to fall into disrepair. Part of my responsibility, I think, as I continue to draw breaths is to make sure people understand that that can't happen again and that we be far better prepared today than we were prior to 2008.
We have to think of it as a regional issue, a regional problem, and a regional solution, because if we don't address it and if we just ignore it, it's going to come up on us like it did in 2008, and then people are looking for answers, and the answer was there all along, and that is you have to fund an infrastructure project and make sure that it's running properly.
The commissioners were all dedicated to helping their fellow man, I'll say, be safer. And I think that over the years, the various appointing agencies have done a good job of selecting people who understood the mission and actually tried to accomplish it. I think they've done a great job.